right to sleep. And these books wake kids up, and they're accurate, so their test scores are going to go up if they're really paying attention. So I have lots of ways of doing that, but we can discuss that too.
Yeah, that's a great point, because when you look at the whole situation, Roz, is that if you don't engage these kids and you do not give them learning that they're excited about learning, your test scores won't improve either. And then, but again, learning is not taking place, and that's the problem, and why the people who are creating these textbooks are going out there and not making learning fun. It's a big mistake. Wouldn't you agree, Vicki?
I absolutely do agree, and that is kind of what I don't understand is why people seem to think that everything has to be standardized. If we want to teach critical thinking, then people have to look at a variety of sources and weigh them and think about them, which is what we authors do, it's what historians do. And I mean, I think that Roz can talk a little bit about going back to original sources. I see a lot online about having kids read original sources for historical events, but I'm not sure that they have the patience or the knowledge to wade through the material. And maybe Roz can speak to that issue.
Yeah, I love using original source material, and I'm going to tell you a little about how I use it, and then I'll tell you why it might be a problem for somebody that's not necessarily a pro. I had sent in today that a little funny title for the show called "I Have a Way of Killing the Bugs Before Drinking Them," and that's actually original source material. It's a quote from a book that I wrote a long time ago called Gold Fever, Tales from the California Gold Rush. And it was a book, actually I did a couple of books, using all quotes from real people in history. And these are stories that you cannot possibly make up on your own. They're hilarious and really telling. And the other book besides Gold Fever was called How We Crossed the West, The Adventures of Lewis and Clark. And the way that I used the material really tells the story of both Lewis and Clark's journey and what happened in the California Gold Rush. So the quote, "I have a way of killing the bugs before drinking them," came from a guy who was on his way to the gold rush in one of the ships that came all the way from New York around Cape Horn and then all the way back up again. And it was such a long journey that the water was becoming horrible. And the guy said, "The water is becoming bad. I don't mind it much. I have a way of killing the bugs before drinking them." And that's not stuff you can make up, but it's really true. The original source material for those came from a guy's diary, but a lot of it came from letters and articles. And it takes the author to put that material together in a form that makes sense. It's not just little separate items. So the other book where I did this, The Adventures of Lewis and Clark, for example, I used the real journals that the people on the expedition with Lewis and Clark, mostly Lewis and Clark, but other people too, what they wrote that they saw every single day, really up close and personal. And they're wonderful material, but you need critical reading skills basically to tie everything together and see if it's the right stuff. And if people just basically go online, they can find terrific stuff there, but they can't put it together the way an author can in a book that can tell you a story from the people who really went there, which is great. And I have lots of other ways to do research, but that's a very much fun one.
All right, well, Darcy has a question for you.
Yeah, well, you keep talking about how you're kind of weaving this into making it fun and memorable for kids. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit more, maybe what activities we can tie in the classroom?
Okay, sure. Actually, we have a website that Vicki will tell you about, which does tie each of our books directly into the national standards. But to make the books fun and memorable, there's tons of things that you can do that you would never do with textbooks. For example, I write and illustrate my books, and so one of the ways that I do it is with the artwork. There's a lot that you can tell. I wrote a book about. I write books about everything, and one of the recent ones is what Darwin saw, and it's a book about Charles Darwin. And it's a large format book that's very, very colorful, but it's written in sort of a graphic novel format, which kids absolutely love these days. And that one has a lot of his quotes in it, too. So you get to travel with him on the ship, both visually and hearing what he said and hearing what I say, as he goes and collects giant bones from fossil animals from a long time ago. And you can see not only what they look like, which I'm very careful with, but you can see what the bones were that he found and how big those animals were, those giant mammals were in South America compared to a human. And you can travel with him through these gorgeous rainforests in Brazil and see all the animals that he really would have seen. And then you can go to the Galapagos, which is, by the way, I researched that by going to the Galapagos and to South America to get the artwork research for this book. And so that was wonderful because I travel all over the world to get this research. It's such a great perk for me, but it's such a great addition to the book.
Yes.
And so I actually went there to get that research, and then you can see all the examples of how he tells how evolution works. So it's very, very easy to understand, but it's like you're going on an adventurous trip with him. That's one of the examples. I did a book that's really famous called George versus George, The American Revolution as Seen from Both Sides. And to do the artwork for that one, the text is so interesting, but talking about the artwork, I used literally hundreds of pictures done during the period of George Washington and King George III to know what they really look like at different ages, and so that they're accurate in there, but as well as being fun. And the facts would knock your socks off, and we could talk about some of that if you want to, too. But you can't use humor. You can't use rumors. You can do the research for these books like someone who was flying up in the sky, taking the roofs off of people's houses so that you could look inside and see what their lives were really like via their secret letters and all their most private information.
Wow. I mean, what I see is that, and then Darcy definitely has a question, I just am amazed at what you're talking about, the research, able to make the kids really picture what they're learning, to really be enthralled by what they're reading and seeing, and like they're really living in this time period. And that's fantastic what you're doing, and that's what Vicki was telling me about before, that basically that's what's needed to make sure that kids are learning, and that when we're teaching this darn test, we're just not making it exciting.
Exactly, and I totally agree with that. And it's so, these books are so much fun. I mean, and they're great boy books. For some reason, boys can't wait to read these books because they've got a lot of adventure inside, you know. And you feel like you're on the adventure. So they love it. And so they really remember it. I met a kid one time who was very embarrassed by his parents, who told me he slept with it under his pillow for a year. That was the book about Lewis and Clark. This is a boy. So, and it's nonfiction. So what a good recommendation that was for me. I felt wonderful when I heard that.
That's great. I actually have a question, too. I know we keep talking about history and how we can really tie in history and make that more of an immersion for the students. Do you have any suggestions for any teachers who teach something that's not history?
Well, maybe I should take that.
Sure.
Because my books are science books. But if you go to our website, which is inkthinktank.com, you can find books on every subject, on music, on art, on math, on history for older kids, natural history, and hopefully we will continue to be guests on Neil's show, because each one of us has something different to contribute, and it will get people out of the mindset where they have to teach to the test. So again, the website is thinktank.com.
All right, well, Vicki, thanks again. We're running out of time. We have to take a break, but I want to thank Roz and Rosalind. That's where the information is at inkthinktank.com, Roz Schanzer. And I want to thank again Vicki Cobb for calling. You guys really were able to answer all our questions and really get us motivated on what is the problem in education today. The fact that nonfiction books are not being used in instruction and teachers are not able to be as creative anymore. And we're going to keep pushing this, okay, Vicki?
Thank you so much, Neil. Really appreciate being on your show.
All right, well,
good luck to you.
And thanks, Roz, for calling.
Thanks so much for having me. It was really fun.
And I'd love to have you on my other stations as well. All right, take care.
Great.
Okay,
Thanks.
bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
All right, well, we're going to take a break, and soon coming up is going to be CT versus Jason. Again, it's going to be an unbelievable debate, conservative versus liberal. I'm looking forward to it, and Darcy, I'm sure you are as well.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Very much so.
All right, we'll be back in just a moment.
Get up to a 100% scholarship to college and up to $60,000 in assistance. Get paid to learn valuable job skills. Maybe make an extra 20 grand when you join. All while you serve your community and your country. Learn more at NationalGuard.com.
This sector's clear, Captain.
Seems that way. But they're here.
We have an intruder. 30 meters. 20 meters. 12. 8. 5.
I thought you guys were cleaning out here.
Oh, we are. We're, sweeping.
Yeah, for space aliens.
Yeah, for space aliens.
Well, good luck with that.
Imagine what a little time can do for your family.
I think our work is done.
From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Our fugitive has been on the run for 90 minutes. Average foot speed over uneven terrain, barring any injuries, is 4 miles per hour. What I need from each and every one of you is a full target search of every gas station, residence, warehouse, farmhouse, hen house, outhouse, and doghouse in that area. Your fugitive has just cashed in his 401k plan, and all he had to do was roll it over.
Learn about rollovers and protecting your financial future, and choose to save.
You can't mess with a big dog.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show, The Total Education Hour. I wanted to talk to Darcy for a second and talk to her, first of all, about what other shows are on my Total Education Network and some exciting shows that are coming up this week. I'll have Susan Glazier on the program. She wrote Who's the Boss, Darcy? And it's a very, very interesting book, and she calls my parenting show every Thursday. It's really good.
Oh, wow.
And then later that week on Thursday, I have a parent experts who call the program, and you go to my website at totaltutor.org to learn more information. That it's really interesting because these parent experts come up with such great information, and I'm really interested in what goes on.
That's fantastic.
And then that next Friday night, it's going to be an unbelievable Asperger's roundtable discussion with some experts, Jeffrey Deutsch and stuff. But now I'm really excited that we're going to welcome an unbelievable debate. Now it's going to be one that I'm going to have to time now. This is going to be an interesting one for all you guys. And first of all, I'd like to welcome Jason, the public school guy, in the left-hand corner to the program. Jason, thanks for calling.
No, it's great to be back on.
Oh, yes, Jason. It's always an exciting time and an exciting place. And then also, I'd like to welcome a conservative teacher to the program.
Thanks, Neil. It's great to be on again.
Okay, so what's our topic, a conservative teacher? And then we're going to kind of break it down very quickly to almost a 6-minute debate, 3 minutes each, and then we'll give the total because, again, we have to then take another break.
Well, as I understood it, you wanted to talk about tenure today. That seems to be what a lot of states are talking about. There are several states out there that are proposing changes to the tenure system. Illinois, Florida, Tennessee, Michigan. A lot of different states out there are looking at tenure and debating modifying it, changing it, or doing something of that sort.
Okay, so let's get it started now. I guess because it was, again, CT's topic. Jason, your first points on teacher tenure.
Well, I think it's important to remember when we debate teacher tenure that we're not talking about a permanent job here, which seems to be the way the arguments tend to go. But what tenure actually is just a right to due process if someone tries to terminate employment. Now, can that process be cumbersome and lengthy? Sure, but all teacher tenure is just or collective is that you have a right to due process if someone wants to terminate your employment.
Okay, how about you, CT?
Well, that sounds all well and good, but by due process, you mean that the only people who can be really fired for or removed from their jobs in education are people that commit criminal activities of any sort. And it's understandable. Of course, those people go, but you can't ever be fired from your job as a teacher for just being a bad teacher. If you're a bad teacher, you're in there for life. And due process means $1 million worth of lawsuits, lots and lots and lots and lots of documentation. And after that, they have to come to a giant conclusion that you are the worst possible teacher ever in the entire history of teaching, and then they possibly can remove you after that.
Okay, let me cut through a whole lot of that hyperbole, which was about 90% of what you said. Yes, teachers can be removed because they're not good teachers, and yes, God forbid that they have to actually have documentation to terminate someone's employment. Yes, they should have to do that, and that process is in there. I do admit that it is cumbersome, but yes, they do. But it is there. I mean, we can use hyperbole and talk in these grandiose words, but the fact of the matter is, the way it's structured currently. Now, I agree it should be changed a little bit, but the way it's structured currently, you can remove teachers not because of criminal acts, but because they're bad teachers. It just means administration has to do their job.
Okay, well, let's see. How would you respond to that, CT? And Darcy and I are going to vote who won.
Well, it's nice to say that you can remove teachers if they're doing a bad job. I'm talking from my personal experience in all of the teachers that I've known, and I challenge Jason to come up with a long laundry list of teachers that he's known who have been let go because they've done a bad job, or perhaps Jason knows the idea that every teacher he knows is doing a fantastic, phenomenal job. I'm looking around my building. I'm looking around other teachers that I know their buildings. I've subbed in a lot of districts, and I can tell you, I can't think of a single teacher who has ever been removed for doing a bad job, and I know a lot of bad teachers out there. And
there's a teacher in my district right now
there's a giant disparity between who is being removed and what you need to do to get removed. And I think that needs to be addressed by putting in place some changes to the teacher tenure system to make it easier for administrators. If Jason's right and it is a process, that process needs to be changed perhaps drastically to allow administrators to remove teachers who are bad. Now, we can debate the measures of that, but I think it goes beyond saying that we do need to put in place changes so that you can remove teachers who are doing a bad job more easily.
Well, actually, let me just reiterate real quick, and then I'll let you guys vote. But the fact of the matter is, I can't come up with a long laundry list of teachers to be fired because most of the teachers I work with, and I have worked with, and I have subbed and worked in other districts, are good teachers. But I do know of a few teachers who have been removed for their job because they're not good teachers. Not because they committed a crime, but because they're not good teachers. As a matter of fact, in the current building I'm in right now, they're removing a teacher right now for that very same reason, because she's not a good teacher. Now, maybe the administrators where you work at CT don't do their job right, but my administrators do. And it is cumbersome, and I do agree with you on one point, that does need to be modified. But I don't think it needs to be drastically changed. I just think it needs to be slightly modified. We don't need to throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Okay, one more minute for CT on this.
Yeah, I don't recommend, and I do agree with Jason that I think tenure does serve a purpose and does do some important things and provide some important protections for teacher, but for teachers, but I share a different opinion about the quality of education that I'm seeing out there in my district, in my state, and in the country. And I'm looking at our testing records, and I'm looking at the results, and I'm saying that the results are not justified for the amount of money that we're spending in our nation on teachers and teaching and education. And so there definitely needs to be some teachers removed, and it's not just a handful. It is, in my opinion, a high percentage.
Okay, stop.
And to do that, you need
stop,
to adjust
stop,
tenure.
stop. Now, Darcy, who won?
Oh, wow. Okay, really quickly, just to kind of give my reason behind this. I think that honestly what we're seeing is that in some districts we are using tenure the way that it was intended, and in others we are not. Honestly, I have to say CT. Sorry, Jason.
So, Jason, I'm going to call it a tie, but that means that the winner is
That's
CT.
a cop-out.
No, I'm not.
What if I had said it was a tie?
No. See, the reason I do is because Jason has great points too. Okay, well, guys, we're going to have to take a break. Thanks for coming on. CT, what is your website again? You can stay on for a couple minutes before someone else calls because Larry Pratt's going to be on next. But what's your website?
My website is aconservativeteacher.blogspot.com. That's aconservativeteacher.blogspot.com. Anybody wants to come read my thoughts on teaching and education and politics,
Okay, all right.
check it out.
All right, thanks, CT. And Jason, stay online, CT, for the break, and then we'll be back in just a moment.
And now, another adventure with Savings Man.
Let's live at the beach.
Let's golf every day.
How about a trip?
Season baseball tickets?
Sounds like you're planning for retirement.
Hey, Savings Man.
Are you saving enough?
We are, thanks to the easy ballpark estimate worksheet at choosetosave.org.
Hope you're saving for health insurance.
Absolutely, because health insurance is important. Thanks, Savings Man.
No, thank you.
So visit choosetosave.org and get your ballpark estimate today.
I am Joan Rivers with an important announcement. Getting old is horrible, okay? Horrible.
You're not old. I mean, you're older, but you're not old.
You want to see old?
Oh, God.
Yes, grow up, for goodness sakes. The last man to hit on me was an undertaker. I know where
I don't want to talk about
Well,
this,
you're going to
Mom.
have to talk about it. It's the future. It's coming right at us. And I'm not worried about dying. It's getting there. I mean, heaven is going to be fabulous. It's going to be a giant shopping mall, and there's going to be 20% off on everything, except for me, 44.
You know, you're doing jokes, and I'm just not ready.
Well, you have to be ready. You have to listen to me. Look, there are things to discuss. They're going to be my needs. They're going to be my wants.
You know, Mom, I don't want to hear this. I just don't want to hear this. La, la, la,
Don't give me la, 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 la,
I
la.
don't. I can't. I can't do
Talk
this.
to your family about aging, even
No.
if they're not ready to listen. Come on, listen to me. Listen to me.
For the first time?
Yes, for the first time.
No matter who you are, it's not easy talking about aging. For help, go to voa.org/talk. A message from Volunteers of America.
Kathy, who's lived most everywhere, from Zanzibar to Berkeley Square.
But Patty's only seen the sights a girl can see from Brooklyn Heights. What a crazy pair.
Kath, have you heard from Patty and Richard yet?
Yes. Patty was going to stop and pick up a pie, and Richard was going to file for Medicare.
Filing for Medicare? We won't eat till midnight tomorrow.
Richard's filing for Medicare online at socialsecurity.gov. It takes less than 10 minutes.
10 minutes? But I had to go to the office and wait.
Online.
What about the paperwork?
Online.
But Richard's still working.
Line. Hey.
You made it.
No problemo, Papo. I got the pie.
And I got my Medicare.
And I've got the turkey.
Did you get that online too?
Hour. I'm back with my co-host Darcy Hyman, and again, really interesting PSAs we've been listening to today. I'm interested in the one about texting while driving. I know I don't do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely don't ever.
No comment. But
do
I want to
that.
welcome Jarrett to the line. Jarrett, again, my other co-host. Welcome to the Total Education Hour. I'm glad you called this week. You've been off for a couple weeks, but we have a really interesting guest that you get to stay on the line and interview. So I might be just adding some questions. But again, remember time in this because it's pretty interesting. We are running out of time, which I couldn't believe in an hour show.
Well, you know what? You have to give me a minute because I have to finish my text while I'm sitting here at this red light, and then I'll be able to talk to you.
Red lights don't count as driving.
Oh, okay.
So-
but no, I'm back and ready to go now.
All right, well, great. We're waiting on the call. But let me tell you about our guest, just to kind of give you some background. His name is Larry Pratt, and he's from gunowners.org, and he is basically looking at gun control on school campuses. And we're going to discuss that, so I'm looking forward when he does call the program. But, Jared, just to kind of update you, the Total Education Network is syndicating across the country so quickly. We're getting stations every day. I can't believe the growth. And you leave for a couple weeks and things are crazy.
Wow. You mean you're being picked up by other stations?
Yes, I am being picked up by other stations, but we'll talk more about that. You go to my website to find out.
Great news.
But, Jared, so what has been going on with you? So now I'd like to get your take right before we get our caller, Larry, calls in about the whole gun control fact. What is your take on gun control, especially on school campuses?
Well, I'm all for gun control. I don't think they have a place on school campuses, and certainly I understand. I mean, quite honestly, my feeling is that only law enforcement should have guns.
Okay, and we do have, and we do have Larry. We do. We're getting ready to. We're waiting on Larry Pratt to call the program. So what about the school for the gun control?
As I said, I think that only law enforcement should have guns. So there should be no weapons of any kind on campuses. Again, that's my feeling about it. I know that there's constitutional rights, and there's people that would argue the constitutionality of it.
CT, I completely forgot you were on the line. CT, we have to let you go, but what is your take in this whole gun control thing? Real quick, 1 second.
Well, I know that there are only two places you can't have guns, which is on airplanes and on schools. And so I would expect if you walk onto those places with a gun, you're going to be the most heavily armed person.
All right. Well, CT, thanks again for calling the program. If you're welcome to come on any of the other shows on the Total Education Network. Just email me and let me know your availability. We're on every night at 10 o'clock, okay?
All right. Thanks, Neil.
All right. Take care. All right. Now we're waiting on – we had Larry Pratt on the line, on hold, and we're waiting for him to come on the program. We heard Jarrett's take, and Darcy, I'm sure you're going to listen before, again, the number's 412-621-9728. We'd like to welcome Larry Pratt to the program from gunowners.org. Thanks for calling the program.
Well, thanks for having me on. Good to talk with you.
And Larry, I am completely confused about your take. And again, it's very interesting because, again, I am a conservative on a lot of views. But can you sell me in the fact of the whole thing we're talking about today, gun control on school campuses? Can you explain a little bit of that to me so that my two co-hosts, that I'm sure are not for you on this, you could sell me to the point that I might take your side?
Well, there's, I guess, a number of different ways to come at the question. One is that it is the law of the land that people should be armed. The term militia that's used in the Constitution and in the Bill of Rights had 150 years of consistent legal definition at the time it was taken up in the writing of the Constitution. And the meaning was, well, at the time of the founding of the Republic, they were talking about military rifles, that every man had to own a military rifle, and when called to duty for the militia, he had to come. And if he failed on either one, he would be fined. And when they wrote the first Militia Act in 1792, right after the final sign-off on the Bill of Rights, they pretty much articulated that very same legal definition, in effect codified it for the federal government. So at least a free man between the ages of 17 and 44, whatever the colonial laws might have stipulated, was expected to have a gun. And probably the more daily meaning of the why we ought to have guns is for protection. It's simply impossible for the police to be around most times when we need them. And a very vivid example occurred in a Colorado Springs church about 3 years ago. It was around Christmas time, and a guy that really had it on for Christians came with 3 guns, about 1,000 rounds of ammunition, on his way into the church in the parking lot. He killed a couple of sisters. But he hadn't counted on one thing. When he got inside, he was immediately met by one of the two teams of security made up of members of the church that alternated between attending the service and patrolling the church. And he was immediately engaged, and within 30 seconds, he was dead. 6 minutes later, the police got there, and that's a very good response time. But the carnage that monster could have wreaked in that church was enormous, and yet people were able to protect themselves, and they took advantage of it. And that happens a lot in America, usually without even firing the gun. It's enough for the criminal to realize that he hadn't expected that, and new game.
Larry,
go ahead.
And I want some of my co-hosts to ask some questions. I'm kind of going on your side this way. I'm going to talk about some of the incidents that have happened on school violence, especially Columbine, or even talking about the college situation that occurred in Virginia Tech, and I'm sure that's what you're thinking about. And it's a very interesting topic. But let's first go with Jared's question, and then Darcy.
I could not. My connection, hearing Larry, was pretty unclear, so I wasn't able to hear most of what he said. So I'll go with the question that I kind of had prepared in advance, and that would be what evidence supports that. What evidence or research supports the fact, and he may have answered this, so I apologize if that is the case, but is there quantitative evidence that supports the fact that if other students or other people had weapons, that school violence would have been either eliminated or reduced or minimized?
There is some, because in our country, most of the mass murders that have taken place have been in gun-free zones, be it a government building or a school, or some states prohibit churches from being places where you can have a concealed carry firearm. Whereas, on the contrary, in the state of Utah, you are free to carry a firearm on any campus in the state, from a kindergarten to a graduate university facility. It's impossible for you to be barred if you have a concealed carry permit. And they haven't had a problem. People don't abuse their ability to protect themselves. And I think it sends a pretty good message to bad actors that that's maybe not a good place to do it. Utah did have one mass killing, and that was in a mall that was very visibly posted, "No guns." And a killer went in there, obviously oblivious to the sign. And if it hadn't been for the only exception to the law, an off-duty policeman carrying a concealed firearm who was able to very quickly take him out, he could have murdered many more people than he ended up killing. So we know that as an average year, the surveys that have been taken of people that have been victimized, some 2.5 million people a year use a gun in self-defense. And that, as I said earlier, that's almost always without having to fire the gun. And that's probably, let me think, that's about 3.5 times the number of times that a gun is used for a criminal purpose. So clearly, the social utility of an armed populace is pretty evident.
Okay, Darcy, your question.
Yeah, actually, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the program. I really like the argument that you're making here, and I'm kind of torn. I do have to agree with you for the most part that, if we encourage people to protect themselves and if we get the right education out there for people to actually be able to carry a weapon, I think it's perfectly fine because we're trying to protect ourselves. However, this also kind of feeds into believing that most of humanity is good. Sorry, I like to play devil's advocate, but a lot of people don't believe that most of humanity is good, and therefore, once we place a gun or any weapon in someone's hands, they're automatically going to go towards the kind of the more evil side. Do you believe that this is correct, or do you think that most of society will be responsible?
Well, I happen to agree with you about the nature of man. We're fallen. We never had a chance once Adam let Eve take that first bite. It has been downhill ever since. But precisely for that reason, I need a gun. I have to be aware that there are people that will do bad things, and if there is a gun ban and I'm foolish enough to obey it, I know one person that will not obey it. The criminal.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And we can look at England where they have a virtual gun ban.
Larry, I absolutely agree with you. That's the fact. Oh, let's control guns, or let's control marijuana or certain things like that. The bottom line is when we go ahead and do all this stuff, it's not going to keep the criminals from doing it.
Right.
Oh, we're not going to allow people to have weapons in their house if someone breaks in. Well, but the criminal could have that weapon.
Well, once you make something taboo, it's all the more seductive. It's something that you want even more. So.
And we also know that when...
I guess I have another a question for Larry. I mean, does he foresee any restrictions, any tests, any, or would we be just going through the basic licensing and permit carry laws that each state has? I mean, quite honestly, the last thing I want to see is some 19-year-old freshman carrying a gun. And so I would hope that Larry would have some kind of plan in place that would make sure that that the people that would be carrying weapons would actually be responsible. Because let's face it, I mean, 19-year-olds get behind of a wheel and drink and drive. Do we really want them to also drink and have access to weapons too?
Well, most states that have concealed carry permit systems, and by the way, 4 states have no permit requirement whatsoever, and they are certainly not at the top of the violent crime list of states. But the states that have those requirements, you typically, I can think of one exception, but I'm not sure there's many more. You can't even be carrying a gun or own a handgun until you're 21. But the fact is that when people carry a firearm, if anything, they become more cautious, more reluctant to let some jerk on the road get them angry, more reluctant to let somebody's vicious or stupid remarks fluster them. And instead, what you see when you study concealed carry permit holders' records, crime records, and it was done in large concealed carry population states of Ohio, Texas, and Florida, the violent crime rate of the concealed carry permittees was 91% less than the general population. And for that matter, it was even somewhat less than the police officers. So I think the awareness of having a firearm is serious enough that it's a serious enough responsibility that most people handle it very responsibly because they know that they could end up killing somebody. You don't necessarily think about that with a car. Maybe that's why cars cause many times more fatalities, or used to cause fatalities, than do firearms. So I think we've got a pretty good case that people should be carrying firearms, certainly if they so desire to, and that it's socially beneficial.
Okay. Well, again, I want my listeners 412-621-9728 if you want to chime in on this whole gun control thing. But we're going to take a break. Larry, can you stick around for a little bit longer today?
Okay.
Okay, that's great. And then, and Jarrett, Chris will be calling in. So some great questions, but you can stay on until Chris Grove calls. Again, you're listening to the Total Education Hour, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
There comes a time in life when you need government information,
and you just don't know which way to turn.
USA.gov.
Find your Social Security benefits online. USA.gov.
Our list of jobs will put you on cloud nine.
USA.gov. Shop auctions for a used minivan anytime.
USA.gov.
It's government made easy for the people. USA.gov.
Delhi is a mad, chaotic place at first glance, but there is a method to the madness somewhere. I've lived in Delhi all my life, and I have seen the weather change. The monsoon this year has been more erratic than I can ever remember. It's at least a month and a half late. We've had, I think, highest temperature in the last 50 years. Growing up, you'd wait for a squall. It was short, it was intense, but it used to come nearly every evening, sometime in the beginning of the summer. This year, there's not a drop. Climate change is something that affects everyone. It's not class-specific or society-specific. Some estimates say 2017 Delhi, 15 million people are going to be without water. It's quite scary living in Delhi and knowing that.
The American Legion. We're a powerful force for the nation. We pledge ourselves to our veterans, our youth, a strong national defense, and Americanism. These 4 pillars shape our work and what we do for America. We work relentlessly within our 4 pillars of service, and we succeed. We're committed to making sure all veterans receive the benefits they deserve for the sacrifices they've made in service to America. We support and promote citizenship and integrity in America's future leaders. We know what policies, tools, and manpower our military needs to protect this great country. We fight to get these things done. We're patriots through and through. We promote and defend these values every day in communities across the nation. Go to legion.org to find out more about the American Legion's commitment of service to America.
They are accidents waiting to happen. This year, 1 in 3 older adults will fall in their own home, breaking bones, fracturing hips, shattering lives. Yet many falls can be prevented, meaning they're not really accidents. To make your home safer, visit orthoinfo.org/falls. A public service message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, where staying on your feet is doctor's orders.
Welcome back to the Total Education Hour. Again, I'm the host of the show, Neil Haley. I'm with Larry Pratt of gunowners.org and also Darcy Hyman, my co-host. And now, Larry, I am kind of torn on this. I see my other co-host, Jarrett, who was on the line. He basically didn't believe in anything you're talking about. But I'm shocked that Darcy really does go to the center in certain things. But our topic, we kind of go in, and I like that, Darcy, about you. The topic, Larry, when I'm looking at this, is school campuses. Now, we're talking about, I think it's a good thing to be in the house, that you should be able to carry a concealed weapon when you're in certain areas, and you should be able to have the right for a gun. But what about in schools, in the safety of schools? Are you just talking about colleges, or are you talking about high schools as well?
Well, if you remember, I mentioned that in Utah, it's legal for a permit holder to carry a concealed firearm from anywhere from a kindergarten to a graduate school. And not only is it not a problem, but I'm quite confident that Utah is better off for it. Many states allow the colleges themselves to make the call, and in some cases they have made decisions. Their trustees will make the decision that anybody with a permit is free to do so on the campus. And I think that makes perfect sense, because the last thing in the world you want is to have a repeat of Virginia Tech or Columbine, where the only person with a gun is the murderer. We've got to send a message to the criminal element that you want to play like that, you may get one shot off, but after that, you don't know what's going to happen to you.
Okay, so now let's think about, so you were talking about how could Columbine not happen if there was better laws that people could protect themselves?
Well, unless you're talking about a soldier going back to finish his high school, you probably wouldn't have any students that would qualify for the permit because of age, but you'd certainly have teachers and principals and custodians and other personnel working at a school at any level that would be able to do so. In fact, I interviewed on my weekly show the superintendent of a school system outside of Dallas, and he said, look, our police station is, the closest is 20 minutes away, and who knows where the responder may actually be when a need would come up. So he got his board to agree, the county board, to agree to have training for any of the teachers that wanted it, and that then they would be able to have a concealed carry firearm on that high school campus. And we haven't, of course, had any problems there. And I'm sure he made it public what he was doing, because part of the idea is that you deter the criminal element by giving them a great degree of uncertainty about does he or doesn't he, does she or doesn't she. And that, I think, has been a factor in why concealed carry laws have been one of the two things associated with actually causing a drop in violent crime. The other thing being a cop standing right there by you. That's a much less likely moment for a crime to start.
Larry, I'm sorry to interrupt. We do have a caller. Jarrett, thanks for calling. I remember I told you Chris was going to get some time. You got a call this week, okay? A bunch of different shows, all right?
I will. I have lots of questions, but I'll yield the floor to the next caller.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, bye. Well, we're now going to get Chris Grove on the line and see what his take is, Larry. But, Larry, I see what you're talking about. But, again, I'm not a violent person. And Darcy's laughing. And I do have Christopher Grove on the line, my BSC expert. And, Chris, I think you were listening to, you were able to listen live what we're talking about with Larry Pratt. And that I'm just saying I'm not a very violent person. And you're talking about teachers having guns and school custodians having guns and the lunch lady having a gun. Now, the fact of the matter is, Chris, what is your take on this? Because we're really getting into the meat of this with schools now.
There are a number of things that come to mind whenever I think about us talking as Pennsylvanians about having guns. Correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, but I understand in Pennsylvania you're actually allowed to carry a sidearm out in the open. Nobody does it, but I understand
believe
we're
that
allowed
is correct.
to.
Many states have that provision.
Okay. Well, there are a lot of things that we don't know about guns because guns are so taboo. One thing that I think that we need to do is take away the taboo edge that guns have with a little bit more
You've just made an
education.
argument for getting rid of the zero tolerance policies when a kid can get expelled from school by using his index finger and his thumb and going bang. I think we have been teaching that, as you say, guns are taboo, and that's absolutely the wrong thing to be communicating to people, because the bottom line of that kind of I shouldn't have a gun mentality is, then what are you going to do? Just stand there as a teacher and watch some monster mow down the kids? You're not going to have any effective way of responding?
Chris, respond to that. Darcy and I have a kind of pro-Larry.
Yeah. If you look at the studies of different municipalities that have allowed guns, and the neighboring municipalities who have banned guns, you'll see that criminals still have their firearms and
great
still have
point, Chris. Great point.
Yeah, I agree with Larry 100% that whenever you educate and teach people how to respect firearms and understand, if you would see your principal with a gun on his side, okay, that's we understand that gun is most likely on safety and he doesn't have one in the chamber, and we understand what's going on with that gun. And not just, oh my God, there's a gun, and I've never seen one in my life, and that's so horrible, I'm afraid of guns. Okay, if you're a law-abiding citizen, you're not going to be, if you're not exposed to guns, most likely you're not going to go get a gun and commit a crime, but the other people will, and it's not a terrible thing for the good citizens to understand what guns are and carry them amongst them.
It wasn't that long ago that, as far as I can tell, every government school around, including in Washington, D.C., had target ranges in the basement of the school, and kids would be part of a club. There would be junior ROTCs, and also kids would take, even if they weren't going to participate in a club, they would be able to take their rifles to school, because on the way to or returning from school, they might want to do some plinking. They might want to hunt for a squirrel or whatever it might be. And nobody thought anything of it. I've had GOA members tell me that when they brought their new rifle to school and the teacher was admiring it, he said, "Hey, you want to see my new 38?"
Wow. Darcy, one question before we're running out of time.
Yeah, really quickly. I know Neil kind of mentioned that he's not a violent person, which is good. But I'm just saying, what do you think of that stereotype? Because I have heard that from a lot of people, that they believe that you have to be a violent person to be for carrying weapons or to even have a weapon.
Well, I don't consider myself a violent person, but I have determined in my mind that if I had to use a gun to save my life or someone else's, then I would do it.
Right.
It's not that I'm looking for the opportunity, far from it. Because if I ever had to shoot somebody, that's the beginning of so much trouble and expense. That alone is reason why most gun owners, I think, would turn and walk away from a bully, would allow the jerk to cut him off in traffic, and avoid trouble. That's something I have heard so many times from people who carry firearms.
All right, well, Larry, more information on you, we can go to gunowners.org, Larry Pratt, or 888-886-GUNS, correct?
That's us, and if they go to gunowners.org, they can go to the Action Center. We have a free email alert that keeps them posted about our work on Capitol Hill, and also it'll have built-in email that they can send off to their members of Congress. Which
all right, Larry, I'm sorry we're running out of time. I appreciate you being a guest. Thank you, Chris Perone, for being my producer and all my great guests, and we're running out of time. Good night, everyone, and I'll talk to you tomorrow at 11 o'clock Eastern and 4:30 on Friday next week. Good night.
Good night.
Another adventure with Savings Man.
Look, honey, the neighbors just bought a big screen TV.
Hey, I just got a bonus at work. Maybe we should get one too.
Hold on there.
Savings Man.
Using your bonus to secure your future by paying down debt or saving is a better way to go.
Well, I declare you're right, Savings Man.
Stay ahead by choosing to save, and don't worry about keeping up with the Joneses.
But their name is Johnson.
For more tips and tools, visit choosetosave.org today.
I thought indoor tanning was safe. They said their tanning rays were less likely to cause a sunburn.
What you need to know is UV light from indoor tanning can cause
premature aging, including wrinkles, sagging, and age spots. So instead of making you look cool, it can make you look old.
And even worse, UV light can increase your risk of skin cancer, including melanoma, the deadliest form of skin cancer, especially when exposed at an early age.
And treatment can be surgery, and sometimes even chemotherapy and radiation.
In fact, current estimates are that 1 in 5 Americans develop skin cancer.
And 1 person dies from melanoma about every hour.
I don't want to be one of them.
I don't want to be one of them. I don't want to be one of them.
This message brought to you by the American Academy of Dermatology.
I'm telling you, indoor tanning is not as safe as you think. In fact, indoor tanning is totally out.
Savings Man here with a story for you about 2 young spenders named Tommy and Sue. Their parents let them buy whatever they chose, like video games and designer clothes. As they grew older, they spent all their pay on fancy cars, houses, 2 lattes a day. They lived in the moment, never saving a dime. When they tried to retire, they'd run out of time. Working forever is Tom and Sue's fate, so choose to save now before it's too late. Visit our website to find out more, 'cause a happy ending's worth saving for.
Get up to a 100% scholarship to college. And up to $60,000 in assistance. Get paid to learn valuable job skills. Maybe make an extra 20 grand when you join. All while you serve your community and your country. Learn more at NationalGuard.com.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in local schools. They were at Bunker Hill, Gettysburg, Iwo Jima, Khe-Sanh. They've been under the sea and to the moon. They stand watch in Korea. They keep drugs away from our shores. They patrol our skies every day, every year. These are your sons and daughters. You see them in church and at Little League games. But they are special because they work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
You've probably seen this before. Hide and seek? Well, sort of. Kids will often withdraw when their needs aren't being met. I know. It would be easier if they just walked up and said, "Hey, I'm feeling like I need a little one-on-one time." But kids have their own language, and it's up to us parents to learn it. Once you figure out how to speak your kid's language, well, you don't really have to say much at all. A thought from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
My Jamie, she was my baby girl, my precious baby girl. When Jamie was a teenager, she would spend her lunch hours going to the tanning salons. I didn't realize how dangerous they were. If you tan when you're young, your risk for melanoma are increased by 75%. That's huge. What I would say to mothers that allow their daughters to tan, no mother should have to visit their daughter in a cemetery. 1 person an hour dies from melanoma. Jamie's hour was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday, March 16th, 2007. I hope no one else has to mark their hour.
This message is brought to you by the American Academy of Dermatology.
Our fugitive has been on the run for 90 minutes. Average foot speed over uneven terrain, barring any injuries, is 4 miles per hour. What I need from each and every one of you is a full target search of every gas station, residence, warehouse, farmhouse, hen house, outhouse, and dog house in that area. Your fugitive has just cashed in his 401k plan, and all he had to do was roll it over.
Learn about rollovers and protecting your financial future, and choose to save.
You can't mess with a big dog.
And now, another adventure with Savings Man.
This is great. Every day should be like this.
It will be when I retire in a few years. I've been planning and saving.
Did you save for me? Well, this is unexpected.
Where'd you come from?
Out of the blue, just like an illness, an emergency, or a...
That's enough, Mr. Unexpected.
Savings Man.
There's still time to plan. Find out how at choosetosave.org with a ballpark estimate worksheet.
I will. Thanks, Savings Man.
No, thank you.
So visit choosetosave.org today.
Meet Kathy, who's lived most everywhere, from Zanzibar to Barclay Square. But Kathy's only seen the sights a girl can see from Brooklyn Heights. What a crazy pair.
Kath, have you heard from Patty and Richard yet?
Yes. Patty was going to stop and pick up a pie, and Richard was going to file for Medicare.
Filing for Medicare? We won't eat till midnight tomorrow.
Richard's filing for Medicare online at socialsecurity.gov. It takes less than 10 minutes.
10 minutes? But I had to go to the office and wait.
Online.
What about the paperwork?
Online.
But Richard's still working.
Online. Hey.
You made it.
No problemo, Papo. I got the pie.
And I got my Medicare.
And I've got the turkey.
Did you get that online too?